We're done?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So today we have Ash and Hassan. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to be talking about The Unfair Advantage, your new book, which is being launched when?
January the 23rd, 2020.
Amazing, amazing. Could you tell us what The Unfair Advantage is?
Okay, the unfair advantage is all what we believe is the secret to success, right? You hear often that it's about hard work and grit and determination, and I mean, it's right to an extent, but it's not the full story. Actually, success is much more about unfair advantages, right? People don't all start from the same spot. It's not a level playing field. We all have different points in life when we want to start a business. We all have advantages already. We have backgrounds, we have luck, we have status, we have expertise, we have money, or if we don't have money. These are all unfair advantages. And this is what we want to discuss in our book. And it's based on our own personal research as entrepreneurs, and also based on investing in startup founders and seeing patterns there. Yeah.
Why did you guys write this book? Because I've spoken to a couple of authors before. It's a big pain. It takes a lot of time, a lot of mental trauma.
Yeah.
Why did you guys write this book?
Yes, a lot of sweat and tears went into this book actually. And why did we write it? Look, I think it's really important that in this day and age that there's more business books from people with different lens and different view of the world. We come from a very diverse background. I'm originally from Birmingham. I moved to London, and I was involved in the world of tech startups from an angle where you wouldn't expect me to be involved. You know, my typical Asian parents, right? They were like, "There's only 4 things you can be: either doctor, engineer, lawyer, or a failure." And I was a failure.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, oh, okay. So I'm going into something completely different, and so I wanted to write this book to inspire a new generation of people that whatever your background is, you can still attempt to do a startup and still become successful. Whatever your background is, whatever project you want to start. And I always felt like an underdog in life and underestimated. And so from that perspective, it felt like, okay, there's a need for somebody to write a book from a different view, a different lens of how life is. So in the book, we talk about your circumstances more than just your personality and how that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
In the book, we talk about how even though you might not have something, how that could be turned into an advantage. And we call this a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So we wanted people to be inspired. We wanted people to understand and be empowered that it's not your fault, that if you're working really hard and the hustle is being told to you that it's just hard work, there's actually more to it.
Yeah, interesting. And you said that you come from a different angle, and obviously you started would you be able to kind of go over your background, because it was a really interesting,
Sure,
it's quite interesting.
So at the age of 19, I dropped out of college twice at university, and my parents were like, what are you going to do? So I eventually sat in my parents' attic in Birmingham, and I built a website, an e-commerce site selling shoes on the internet.
Interesting.
Only because my friend owned a shoe company, and his parents were manufacturing ladies' shoes. So we decided, okay, tell you what, why don't we take this online? This was back in 1997.
Wow, okay.
So this was like 56K modem days.
Yeah.
Really early stages. So I had to build...
Yahoo search.
Yahoo search, just Yahoo directory, not Yahoo search.
Yeah.
It's called Yahoo directory. Alta Vista search.
Alta Vista.
You probably way before
I was 7 years old. So.
Yeah. So I was like 18, 19 years old at this stage.
Yeah.
And I built this website, and I had to do everything from the ground up. So I did PHP, MySQL, web development, and I learned about building these websites. So I built this website. It did really well. We got orders from all over the world, and it was really cool. And then a year later, we won an award for that website, and they were like, "Hey Ash, you won an award, best e-commerce website. Why don't you come along to London and work for one of these agencies that develop websites for everybody?" And so I moved from Birmingham to London to work at this agency building websites for other clients, large clients, intranet, extranet, and websites. And that's how I got into London actually eventually. And I was like, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to move on now. I'll sell that to you now. You move on from there. So I had a lot of raw skills. But when I was at this agency, I realized a lot of people were building websites, but no one was asking this kind of question about how to get traffic to a website and how to convert it. And that's where my skill. I got really interested in marketing and online marketing. Before this, I was already interested in the meta tags and the search engine optimization. Google was not around then I think this came out a bit later. Social media was not around, and so I got into building my expertise in marketing and digital marketing and online marketing. I was first person about conversion rate optimization, web usability. I was all on that back in 1998, 99.
That's crazy,
was talking about it.
Yeah.
And then from there, I led on to starting tried to start another startup, .com bubble burst. Went back home. My parents were like, "We told you so." I was like, "Well, okay." I was like, then I started freelancing, working with lots of different freelance companies, and developing my skills more about online marketing. And then eventually I came back to London, and I started working for a company called Tarsus Group. It was a public company that just acquired an online company, and they had no idea what to do. They had no one in the company to work with online. So they called me the new interactive, no, what do they call me? Interactive
New media?
New media marketing manager.
Wow.
New media marketing. That was my job role. New media marketing manager. New media.
Snazzy title, isn't it?
Right, yeah, it was that time I was like quite impressed with it. Like, new media marketing manager. Forget internet and web and all the new titles that come from that. So I did really well there, built the company up, asked for 4 pay raises. I got 4 pay raises. On the fifth one, my MD was like, "Ash, there's nothing I can do now. Either you're going to go off and do your own thing, or that's all I can do. You are earning more than everyone in this department." And I was like, okay. So I came to the point where I was given a lot of scope and exposure in that company for 5 years, building out my team, marketing department, going all over the world, traveling, acquiring new companies into the business and developing their websites and winning awards and doing lots of cool things.
Yeah.
And then one day I met a guy called Jesper Buch. And Jesper Buch is the founder of Just Eat in Denmark.
Ah, okay.
And at this point I was like, hey, you know what, I had a chat with him, and it's like, yeah, and he goes, Ash, you know what, you're kick-ass. I was like, okay. I like kick-ass people. His book is called Kick-Ass, by the way, so if you want to get a copy of his book, it's called Kick-Ass. And he's a really cool guy, entrepreneurial, we got on really well, and it's like Ash, I want you to meet the team, senior team, there's 2 senior people, and you'll be the 3rd one to join the company, and I would like you to become the first marketing director. So I picked up my 6-month-old daughter at home, I looked her in the eyes, and I said, this company better IPO. No, I didn't say that. Because now I'm taking a punt, right?
Yeah.
Away from a full-time job,
Yeah.
cushy job. I've got everything going for me, and then all of a sudden it's like startup world again. And I wanted to get back in startup world. I was always itching to get back in. So I said, cool. And I jumped in 2 feet first with Just Eat. I became the first marketing director. I then we raised £10.5 million, and I did the first TV campaign for Just Eat. And then in 2014, it IPO'd for 1.5 billion. Yeah. And then I started to write, start to speak, invest in other companies. I started another company called Fair Exchange, which is an online marketplace for minicabs. And then I invested and started another company in Dubai called Wash Plus, which is the online laundry app. So I wanted to go to the Middle East. Yeah. That was all interesting. I sold that last year. And then eventually, whilst I was doing all this, I was mentoring and advising, and I was talking on stage. And that's where the idea of the book concept came to me, to talk about what is it that's the one thing about founders and new people starting a project that's unique about them. And what is that? No one could label it what it is. And I label it as the unfair advantage. Interesting. And so that's where the idea came from. And then eventually meeting Hass and working on the book together. And now I've started a company called UHubs, which is all about upskilling and democratizing access to skills education. Because one of my unfair advantages was I didn't have a degree, but I had expertise. And I built up my expertise and stacked my skills on digital marketing and created value out of that for the marketplace. And that's what gave me the opportunity. That's incredible. Hassan, what angle did you come at when it comes to the book right now? Because I mean, you've got a startup background as well. Yeah. What was kind of your intention and kind of motivation to wanting to co-write this with Ash? With Ash. Well, it was an amazing concept, and Ash already had the seeds to it, and he had a very, very early draft of it done while we were working together. So what happened was I started my own startup, which was based on marketing. And I'd had some success with that, and I was thinking what to do next. And I met Ash, we just met randomly at just one of those serendipity things, like at a business dinner. And we bonded over some bad steak or whatever it was, and became friends from there. And because we lived in northwest London as well, so we started to become friends. I went round to his office. I sat in on some pitches that he was doing some angel investing in, and actually I ended up becoming his investment partner. And we started working together, and it was kind of our investment thesis came into what became the Unfair Advantage, what became the book. It was something that we started working on a startup on, and we realized the AI is not good enough there for it yet, but it was this cool idea that we had. And it was kind of based on how do you figure out who's going to succeed
what startup will succeed and what one won't, or at least get more of an idea, or at least be able to grade them a little bit, or filter out the really bad ones. And it kind of helped us to really think. We thought about the problem a lot. We tested it a lot by speaking on stage a lot about it. We were mentoring a lot of startup founders as well, advising, mentoring. So it came from that, and it just became my interest. Ash noticed, and I noticed I'm good at analyzing and figuring out, like, okay, what do they have going for them? Is this any good? Can this grow? And it was kind of based on that experience, really, that we started working on this. And we were really just going to self-publish it, weren't we? We just thought we'd just write something quickly. Neither of us consider ourselves as writers, right? We're just practitioners, we're just entrepreneurs. That's our background, really. So, but we just made an MVP version, did startup principles on the book. We had an MVP version of the book, the lean version. We were just about to self-publish that on Amazon. Yeah. And literally on the day, a literary agent gets in touch with us and goes, please, Ash, Hassan, please don't publish this. And my hand was hovering over the button. We had the cover done, we had the interior design done on the book, we had proofreading, we did everything, right? We were so pleased with it. But then, yeah, we got amazing. It was like, okay, we'll give this literary agent a chance. And she got us 3 publishing offers, which is unheard of for first-time authors. So we're like, okay, we've got something here. We've got traction, right? For our startup idea, basically our book concept. Yeah. So it just kind of happened. We just fell into it. We never had this plan of like, we're going to work on this book together. It was just something that we got the market feedback. I wrote an article that went viral on LinkedIn. We thought, okay, this has got some legs. Let's do this as a book, and then we got a publishing deal. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster, really. Yeah,
I also think there's a zeitgeist right now. You know, everyone wants to become an entrepreneur or a startup founder now. And you look at universities; they've got lots of entrepreneurship schools. We're talking at a lot of universities in the next month as well around this concept, and it's becoming more and more important to get to know who you are as an individual. The schooling system and the system is lying to us most of the time. You know, they're saying it's just hard work, but it's more than hard work. And the schooling system is saying that you need to fix your weaknesses. And what we're saying in the book is actually work from your strengths. And that's a complete different way of thinking.
And the one-size-fits-all thing, which really, that's the thing as well. It's not just a case of like, yeah, everybody should do this. Like, we used to get questions so many times. Oh, should I do an MBA? Should I quit my job and go full-time on my startup? Should I pursue this startup idea? What do you think about my idea? And it's like, there is no one answer. The answer is it depends. And unless we like mentor you one-to-one, like how are we going to figure out all your situations? Do you have dependents? Are you going to be able to live without a salary? There's so many different caveats. And we thought, okay, this depends, right? The answer is it depends. Yeah. And so it depends on your personality. It depends on your goals, your why, your values, your vision. It depends on your circumstances, like your unfair advantages, your situations, your strengths. So that's what we really get into and talk about in the book a lot. And that's kind of what we wanted to achieve, is do something that isn't a one-size-fits-all advice. You know, go against those self-help gurus.
I wanted the book to be a perspective where, look, if you haven't gone to university or college, if you haven't gone to Ivy League, if you haven't got rich parents, you can still do it. But how can you still do it? And that's what this is about. It's about the concept of most books that you read now, they've either gone to Stanford or dropped out of Stanford, they've had an Ivy League background, they're either from Silicon Valley perspective. This is the first time we believe that there's a London perspective, London in a city perspective of working class boy who's been able to have the opportunity of working on something and delivering something and being part of one of the largest IPOs in the last 10 decades with Just Eat, for example. Yeah. And so we wanted to share that story.
Amazing. And delving into the book specifically, you guys talk about the Miles framework. Could both of you guys just elaborate on the Miles framework and what it is?
Sure. So that's one of the things that we developed together on this book. We called it the Miles framework, which is an acronym. And it's just a way of finding your unfair advantages, right? The whole concept between unfair advantages is it's anything which gives you a significant, leg up over the competition. It's some kind of head start. It's some kind of something that other people might not have. And they can't, it's not necessarily something you've earned or worked for. It could just be something that you've just got, right? It could just be a privilege that you've got, or something that, because of your circumstances or background that you have. So a specific insight or some expertise in something. Or it could be how you come across. It could be your accent. It could be your credibility. It could be the money that you have to invest into it, or whatever it might be. So we thought, okay, we realized they don't know what their unfair advantages are, but we believe everybody has unfair advantages, right? So how do you find them? This is an innovative new tool, a framework to figure out your unfair advantages. It's called Miles, an acronym, and it stands for money, intelligence and insight, location and luck, which is right place, right time, education and expertise, and then status, which includes how you come across, as I mentioned, but also how you think about yourself. So your inner status, sort of like your credit, your confidence, your confidence, self-esteem,
Self-belief,
but also who you know, your network. Because people name drop, they're trying to increase their status, right? And they say, oh yeah, I was having lunch with Mark Zuckerberg the other day. Like if somebody was to say that, they're just trying to increase their own status. So your network, who you know, is a massive unfair advantage as well.
I mean, both of you guys, given the fact that this book is more or less tailored to the startup world, how have you seen the tech startup scene evolve in London over the last 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's massively growing. I mean, you can see from the co-working spaces that are opening up, right? There's a ton of co-working spaces all over, and we get so many people coming to our events and speaking, wanting to listen to us. And the London tech scene is growing. I mean, it has had a nuance towards fintech more, but I think it's growing and there's more successful people. And I think things like IPOs in London are helping other people to reinvest in other people. And it's really important that cycle works. And
they come back as angels, right? Just like Cash did, and that ecosystem just keeps growing. But you see the ticket sizes of the investments, they're growing. The rounds are becoming bigger.
There's a pre-seed round now. Like a pre-seed round now. What EF are doing, that's like a pre-seed round.
Correct.
Now,
before you've even got anything. And people are trying to find ideas and so on. But there's good news because there's lots of now we're in a position where we've got mentors and people like Hassan and myself who are around in the industry who can give advice and guidance around what we've been through, and there's lots of other people like this as well, and they're really good at what they've been through, what they've done. But there's times have changed. Now, for example, you have SEIS, which is a scheme that allows people to invest in a startup at 150k, which is a great tax benefit. And it's an easy way to get that initial seed funding that you want. So if you couldn't rely on family and friends, you can create an SEIS setup and get those early investment in. So to equalize that playing field a little bit more and give that opportunity. Your network still matters. Who you know still matters. But it gives you the opportunity to get that initial seed in, right? And get that started. And then also, the good news is also, it's not just about starting tech companies, it's about being able to work with other people in other tech companies. People talk about entrepreneurship and like, I want to start a company. Well, actually, why don't you go and work for a startup company and be the third or fourth or the fifth or the 10th or the 20th person and learn how it works, make your connections, because I made a lot of connections in my workplace. And some of them have become co-founders, investors, and people I've leaned on, the freelancers, and they're helping my projects out and your projects out. So it's really important to understand the tech scene is not just about you starting a company, it's the tech scene overall, everyone starting companies. It's a big wave that's going up and we need to invest more into it. The challenge is VC funding, right? So I think it's £4 billion of VC funding that goes within the M25 and none of it goes outside. Right? So you have to, if you want to start a startup, you have to try and come to London to get access to that funding. So there's a challenge, regional challenge, I think, in the UK, rather than London just being the hotspot. Whereas in Manchester and Birmingham, I was in Birmingham a couple of months ago doing a talk as part of Birmingham Tech Week. Lots of cool ideas, lots of talent. We need to start to get out of this London and start spreading out more. Yeah,
because it's getting more and more expensive. I mean, WeWork shouldn't be for startups. It's not for startups. It's just way too expensive. Where do you think, what conversations aren't being had in the London tech startup space? There's one thing that I'm quite passionate about is vesting schedules for early employees. So you could be in a startup literally sacrificing your family life for the best part of 4 years and then just burn out 4 years later, have to leave, recover, and then you don't get anything out of it. Like, do you think there needs to be a new wave of liquidity for early employees? I mean, it's beginning to happen in Silicon Valley now, but I mean, do you see that coming into London? I mean, it's so important. I mean, how does a company attract and keep these employees for the best part of 5 to 10 years now, and without a real good exit strategy? I mean, an early employee should be able to get something out of the company if they've bust their ass for 3 years.
Definitely, and it's something that the awareness is increasing of more and more. Employees starting to learn how it works, and therefore they're looking at those employee contracts a bit more closely. And I think it's just a case of, I mean, it's just a typical cycle, right? When people get more aware of it, I think it's important, because otherwise, then they're going to get taken advantage of a bit. And we all know how stressful it can be to work at a startup. An early stage startup is hard work. So the only thing harder is being a founder, right? In those startups. So it's just a case of like, yeah, everybody needs to be rewarded. It needs to be win-win-win for everybody involved, and that's really, really important. And attracting that talent and keeping it is just massive. It's one of the biggest challenges is everybody's trying to poach everybody's employees, especially the tech giants. They're always trying to poach the young talent who might be attracted to a startup, but then they're just going to keep going for them because they want to hoover up all the talent, and they have that problem even more in Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
They're always hoovering up that talent. So yeah, it's always.
You have contacts because Just Eat IPO'd.
Yeah.
You were able to get some sort of liquidity event.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to, when you're looking at joining a startup and looking at equities, to understand who the founders are first of all. And what's very important is to understand your circumstances as well. If you're just graduated and you want to work in a startup to get the understanding of it, it's not where you work, it's who you work with that matters. Because that's where you're going to learn a lot more. So equity or no equity, it's just, that's interesting, right? Equity doesn't pay your bills.
Yeah.
Your salary pays your bills. So you need to understand what your baseline is, and are you willing to sacrifice your trips or holidays, whatever it is, to work in this startup, and do you believe in the vision? And I think that's where you have to start to think about, what is this company, who are the founders of this company, because that makes a big difference. Who you work with makes a difference. There's data that says that most millennials, Gen Z, are not really concerned about the salary that they get, but they're more concerned about the growth opportunities within the company and how they can grow. So if you want to join a startup and grow really fast and go into lead different job type roles really quickly, it's a good place to go. Or you can go into the corporate world. So you have to really make up your mind of where you want to be and how you want to develop those skill sets. You can develop the same skill sets in large companies, but now large companies are coming to us and they want to develop the startup mindset. They have innovation centers and creative centers, and they have their own corporate venture arms and so on. So they want to develop this mindset. So it depends on what stage you are in your career and where you're at. And I think this is really important to make a decision. For me, it was really difficult. Like I said, I picked up my 6-month-old daughter and I had to make a decision. But you know what I realized? I was 27 years old. And I thought to myself, if this doesn't work out, I can always get a job. Right?
Yeah, that's one thing people don't realize. The risk isn't as, even starting your own startup, right? The risk isn't as, I mean, yes, the chances are low to succeed, right? But it's not as catastrophic as people sometimes think it might be, because from what you learn from starting a startup, you learn that's the fastest learning curve ever, right? And having that on your CV and being able to talk about that in an interview later down the line is not going to hurt you at all. So it's always a case of like, yeah, it's risky and it depends on your circumstances. Again, do you have dependents? Can you go without a wage? Can you do it as a side hustle instead? Do you have that time? But going into it and taking that risk isn't as big of a risk as it first seems. You can get a job afterwards, just like
your equity should always be seen as a bonus. Never as the main.
It's like investing, right?
Yeah, it's your bonus. If you see it as part of your main compensation, then it's skewing it. You need to make sure you've got everything else in place to survive and live a decent enough life to be able to do what you need to do.
Because you've got even less control.
Equity is literally a bonus, and if it turns into something, brilliant. Liquidity is really difficult nowadays, right? And there's going to be new options. How do you create liquidity, right? Usually it's a trade sale or an exit or a merger, and they take time, right? And an IPO is very, very unlikely, right? 0.01%. I don't know, the stats are very different, but a merger or a trade deal or whatever happens will give you the opportunity to cash in some of those shares. But it's very important to understand who the founder is, understand what market you're going in, and actually do your own due diligence on seeing if this is actually, like an investor would do, to see if this is a growth opportunity. Yeah,
check if they have unfair advantages in the company. We actually say that. A good way to use the Miles framework is to figure out, okay, is this company, you kind of have to think like an investor, because that equity is a risk, right? The equity, if you're getting paid in equity mainly and you're just getting a very measly baseline salary, you have to think like an investor and think, okay, is this going to work? What unfair advantages do they have? Am I going to believe all their bluster and marketing, or can I look at the marketing fundamentals, market fundamentals, and look at the startup idea and the product? Is it solving a real problem? Are they going to be able to grow? Are they running out of cash? Is it kind of bubbles? Do they have moats? Like WeWork just had no moats. That's one of the big things. So there's a lot of things to analyze there.
And also the vision as well. I remember taking a job at Just Eat, and my MD went around at the end of the month with make announcements and saying, well, Ash has now decided to move and he's now going to go to Just Eat, an online takeaway company. And everyone's eyes and faces went, right? So this is back in a time when the iPhone was just coming out. So there was no smartphone ordering or takeaway.
No app store.
No app store, right? So people are like, my takeaway they start looking at each other, right? But I had this vision. I knew the future would be going towards this place.
Yeah.
And so I took the punt on that vision. So you've got to take the punt on that vision as well. Yeah. And also timing is really important. Are you going into a startup where there's already tons of other startups, right?
That's
so
the location.
There's lots of elements to that. And in terms of equity, also, there's a difference. If you're a late employee, you're going to get less. If you're an early employee, you're going to get more. And that makes a big difference as well. So you understand where you are in that picture as well, if that is a really important piece of the puzzle for you. And use the vesting periods over 3 years. That makes sense to me because most tenure needs to be 3 years. Otherwise, there's no point being there. And most leaders now are looking at their leadership. They're looking at their talent and realizing that there's going to be turnover. You can't keep someone for 10 years or 5 years now. There's going to be an 18-month to 3-year turnover, especially with Gen Z and millennial now, right? Unless they want to grow. Right, so the equity pool is that even might not even keep somebody there, right?
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I just feel like I've seen so many people just get like a raw deal, and it's amazing for you because you were able to get a liquidity event, and all of your hard work. I'm sure you weren't working 9 to 5 and Just Eat most of the time. Yeah. I mean, it was a slog, and so that sacrifice should be compensated if they stay for a certain period of time. And I just feel like there's not enough pool of liquidity for early employees to access, because at times now, like look at Uber. They had to have pitchforks and they had to have pitchforks and fire their CEO just so that they could get an IPO. Yeah. I mean, is there anything in your guys' opinion that isn't being talked about in this tech startup space? Actually, well, let's talk on diversity. Diversity is such a broad subject. I mean, you can talk about gender quotas and things like that. I mean, are there elements that aren't being talked about in diversity? Both of you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, I tell you, one of the big areas that's not been talked about. As soon as you think about diversity, you think about race and gender. Yeah. But nobody ever talks about socioeconomic diversity. And that's becoming more and more important. What background are you from? So are you from an Eton Ivy League background, or are you from the comprehensive school, normal school and university background, non-red brick university background? That makes a big difference in how you see the world as well. And so I think in terms of diversity, it's there's a challenge. I think we're trying to fix the gender diversity, but the socioeconomic and the racial diversity is getting more difficult. And if it becomes a quota game, it becomes just a tick box exercise. And then people will just say, look, we've got all these different people in our organization. The key is not having different people in your organization, just having different people in your organization. The key is to have diversity in your leadership teams. People who are driving the vision of the company, to create role models out of those people so other people want to be part of it. And I think that's where we're forgetting this whole idea of what diversity means. And it helps with the bottom line, because when you look at your customer base, it's changing.
You get more insights, right? Well, that's why one of the big things that we talk about. So status is what we talk about diversity in, because it's how you come across, it's your accent, it's how you look, it's the color of your skin, it's if you're male or female, it's all these kinds of superficial judging a book by the cover type of things, right? Unfortunately, but it exists. And no matter how much unconscious bias training you do, it's not something that you're going to fully eradicate, although whatever steps you can do, you can try and do it. But for the individual, you have to really think about how do you come across, and how do you, number one, think about your own confidence and self-esteem and keep yourself going, because internally you're not going to affect the whole system, right? Unless you become an activist, that's something else. We're talking about how do you find success for yourself. And secondly, we think about the fact that, like Ash said, it's about the bottom line. If you have those, so we give loads of examples of ethnically diverse founders in the book. We give a lot of examples of women founders in the book. And the reason is because they're traditionally considered, in the traditional sense, to have a disadvantage, an unfair disadvantage, right? But the double-edged sword aspect is the fact that they can have insights that others don't see. So Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, she noticed that, I'd like to wear tights, but without the feet, because it holds the body in a certain shape, and that's nice. And she had this idea to develop them. She created it, and she became a billionaire after a hard slog. No man would have had that idea, right? How could they have that insight themselves if they don't wear tights?
It's bizarre, because before Sarah Blakely entered that industry, all of the tights manufacturers, the CEOs were all men.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the interesting fact, right? There you go. So that gender diversity has made a massive difference. And there's lots of examples of this. But I think in terms of companies doing it, there needs to be more diversity at the top. There needs to be more clear paths to get to the top in leadership teams, because that's what's going to drive the vision of the company, and also the talent opportunity and role models. We need better role models, and the role models are hidden away. Yes, a tech company will say, yeah, we're really diverse, But when you look at their diversity, when you look at it properly, everyone's in the tech industry. All CTOs and developers are all from India. Well, that doesn't mean it's diverse, right? That's just because that was the easiest opportunity to get those type of talent, that talent into your company. But what about the leadership team? That becomes so much more important. And I think there needs to be a, go.
How do you guys think a company can engineer diversity into their company? Or are there useful frameworks that you guys have seen before?
I think it's a case of trying to encourage and ease and try and think about what things are preventing it. So for example, one of the biggest ways that companies hire, and a very economically kind of expedient way to hire, is to get referrals from your existing employees. Well, you're going to end up with a monoculture, right? Because people who are friends with people like themselves, usually, with similar backgrounds and similar types of people, similar mindsets, similar political biases, whatever it might be. So that's a cheap way to hire, but then you have to realize that that's going to give you a certain type of culture, right? Because everyone's just hiring their friends. So then that's when you get the bro startup culture, right? And that can be an issue sometimes. But again, it's difficult because when you're scrappy and you're a startup and you don't have money for hiring and spending a lot on hiring, that's what's going to end up happening. But as you grow, you really need to try and think about how do you branch out? How do you reach out to people who've never even heard of these opportunities? That's one of the biggest barriers, is people don't know. Like maybe if you're watching Tech Talks London, you know about the tech world and how much opportunity there is in the tech world, but how many people don't, right? And how are you reaching them? How do they even know that these opportunities exist? How can you make it in a way that they're not going to be kind of intimidated to even apply to these jobs? What kind of jargon are they using? What language are they using in their job ads? So basically what you try and do is you don't have some kind of quota or anything like that, or hire people just because they're diverse. But what you try and do is you open it up. You have to try and open it up and try and reach more people at the top of the funnel and try and work at it from there and and not pick people based on just who you like, because who you like is going to be similar to you, and then you're going to have
that's the problem with most.
The meritocracy, right? Do you remember that term? Like people that look like you, because if you look in a mirror, rather than a meritocracy, you end up with a meritocracy. So it's a case of being aware of it and just trying your best to open up beside that.
But also there's things you can do. Like the first thing is to do is create representation of diverse people in the leadership team and then go out and promote it. You have people like the large big four going out promoting to other universities which are not Red Brick universities, right? And you're going to get much more of a diverse pool there, right? And they're also changing the qualification criteria. It's no longer do you need a degree to come in. You can actually go through an apprentice. So
Google did that, right?
Apple's done that.
Loads of companies.
Google, I think, has done that. I don't know if it's done that, but Apple has definitely done that. PwC, KPMG, EY, they've all done that now. Because they want to create an open pool. And the challenge is, how do you reach grassroots when you've got no representation? If there's all 50% of FTSE 100 companies are white men, right? And they're coming and saying, come and work for our company. They're going to be like, I don't see me in this company, right? So that is a big challenge. And then they say, oh, well, look at our team. But then there's no one in the leadership team who's still representing them in that team. So there needs to be more of that understanding that you need to get more people into the leadership team. It's the glass ceiling.
It helps you create the culture. So what happens is, for example, one of the biggest challenges if you're Muslim like ourselves, non-drinking, a lot of what's going to happen is going to be at the pub afterwards in a lot of company cultures. Yeah. And then there's going to be this kind of exclusion that goes on, but without them realizing it, because everyone at the top isn't even aware of the problem. They just think they're just not being sociable by not going along to the pub and drinking. So even you have this issue, right, where early days. So it's a case of, like you said, if you have that representation, you get the insights into how do you make it a more welcoming workplace? How do you make it a more welcoming place culturally for people to work? So it's getting that going.
And that starts right from the job spec that you send out. It starts right from there. You see some job specs that are like, we do Friday drinking hours and Friday get-togethers, and that's not attractive to some people because it takes out a lot of people. Oh, I don't like that. So the diversity issue starts right from creating a good initial onboarding and job spec, right through to teaching the hiring managers about how to deal with diversity and not try and hire people just like yourself.
And even more for attracting women. That can be even more of an issue, right? But people are a bit more aware of the kind of gender balance thing, and they're trying to work on it, but the progress is stalled. If you saw the reports on Eurotech, progress is really stalled, so there needs to be more done on it.
That's really interesting, because we literally, about a couple of hours ago, we spoke to a founder, Jacob from Accurix, and they were very conscious and meticulous about how they engineered diversity in their hiring process. And what they said was they lowered the bar on the job spec, but then they increased the bar on the filtration, because what they found was if the bar was too high, generally women would only apply if they matched every single part of the job spec. And so what they did is they lowered the bar on the job spec, but then they increased it again during the filtration process. And then what they also did was during the interview process, they make sure that they see the same person twice, because some people have bad days during their interview. And then the other one was making sure that males didn't only interview the
males.
So
the smells themselves.
So like they try to get females to interview the candidates more often, and then eventually they were actually able to, without discriminating, actually come up with a pool that was representative, like a 50-50 pool. But I love that, because it was engineered in the right way. It wasn't a band-aid approach, let's meet a quota. It was, okay, we've literally revamped our whole process to make the whole process so that all of the people that we speak to, it's almost equal now. So we don't have to do this band-aid approach.
But there's one other challenge to that, and which is brilliant, by the way. I like the fact they're opening it up, making it easy, accessible. They're opening up the funnel, but there's also a benefit for that, a selfish benefit. We need more talent in our companies, right? It's not just about social justice of getting diversity sometimes.
Chris Sacca said that.
Right.
There's a great case for diversity.
Correct. And it's interesting. So one of the things I've seen right now is, for example, you see a fintech startup just raise Series A, and they're like, we want people from fintech background. Automatically your diversity pool's gone down by saying we want someone from banking background.
What's mad is like
that makes a big difference. If you put that on your job spec, it doesn't matter how wide you go and how low you put the salary, you're going to get the same type of people applying.
Which is crazy, because one of the most successful startups, Square, they had 0 people in the executive team that are from the fintech background. Jack Dorsey literally engineered his gene pool to make sure nobody worked in there, because it comes with preconceived notions, and they were able to engineer it. I think obviously they had like a general counsel that had been in the banking sector, but the whole of the engineering team, none of them worked. The first 30 employees, none of them had worked in the finance sector, because that's how they're able to engineer innovation, because they see things from a different perspective. Jack Dorsey saw it from a perspective, I want to buy chocolate and a cookie. There's not easy financial access, so he built a really cool tool, and then eventually they went from there, which was brilliant.
Absolutely. It makes such a big difference, and if that starts from the leadership team at the top, and they're socially aware and they're much more well aware of it, it makes it so much easier. But if you've entrenched from the start and you're trying to make a change takes time.
Yeah, it takes time.
And it takes time, and there's a lot of challenges around change. But if you're starting a brand new company, you have a blank canvas. You can pick and choose how you want to go. I guess
the theme is if you're only hiring from Oxford and Cambridge, then you're going to get the Oxford and Cambridge type. If you're going to only hire from banking backgrounds, you're going to get the banking, because these aren't diverse themselves, right? That's the problem. So if you make that your criteria and you go, Oxford and Cambridge can filter it for us, so we don't have to spend too much money filtering the applicants ourselves. It's a lazier approach. But then ultimately you have to think the greedy approach to it, which is that this is hurting our bottom line.
It doesn't hurt to have like a great ML engineer from that type of space, right? I mean, they're pretty good.
No, exactly. And that's we talk about that actually in the education chapter, which isn't that fact that these, Google came out of Stanford's PhD thesis of these computer scientists doing their PhDs, Sergey and Larry. And basically that was their project, and their professor's the one who mentored them and pushed them towards doing it and stuff. So no, there's definitely value coming from the top unis, but it's just a case of like, how do you look for the talent? It's a difficult question, right? But these are some of the ideas that they can work towards.
I think you need to take away from the fact that I think job specs are becoming too much like a tick box exercise. They haven't got fintech or accounting experience, they're out. They don't even look at the CV. They don't even give it a chance. And I think that's where the challenge is with the internal organization. If the leadership team is giving their recruitment partners and the recruitment team the opportunity to meet lots of people, then it makes it easier. But a lot of recruitment is like, right, we need to fill this job, bang, bang. And there's so many jobs which are unfilled. And then there's a skills gap of £6.5 billion worth of skills gaps, right? And sometimes when people are coming, they're not going to have the skills that you want them to have. So you need to start to upskill them. That's why I created G-Hubs, to give them the opportunity to say, right, okay, we have the right attitude, right mindset. Can we upskill this person into the organization and onboard them? And I think a lot of focus is happening around onboarding graduates and people into the organization in the right way, and then giving them the ability to see there's a line to partnership, a line to seniority, rather than just this is it, that person's never going to move and that's it. And there's problems like this in the Big Four right now, right? And one of my colleagues works in the Big Four, and it's like all the partners are white 40-year-old males, and they're trying to change it. And they're struggling, and been trying to do it in the last 5 years. Right? So they're still struggling to change that. You know?
Amazing. Wrapping up in terms of your book, I believe the third part of your book is Tactical Steps. Two-step guide. Would one of you two be able to talk about that?
It's a startup quick start guide as part 3. It basically, you start with the concept, which is that where does success come from? And the idea that it's not purely a meritocracy. No one lives in a pure meritocracy. That just doesn't exist, because who you know matters, how you come across matters, all the stuff we spoke about. These are all unfair advantages, and then, but also the double-edged sword angle to them as well. So we talk about that in part 2, which is how to find your unfair advantage. It's about auditing yourself. It's about the miles framework and breaking that down step by step. Thirdly, part 3 is all about how to start a startup. So you start with what's your why? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to get out of it? Secondly, there's 2 different types of startups before you even get going. There's 2 types of startups. One is a lifestyle startup. You don't necessarily need to raise funding for that in most cases, especially if it's not capital intensive, especially if it's online or more digital. And you can make really, really good money. If your goal is to be a millionaire or even a multi-millionaire, you could do that with a lifestyle company. You don't have to become a billionaire, right? But then the second type of company, which we move on to, is the more glamorous, the glitzy, is the one in all the magazines. It's the Ubers, it's the Just Eats, it's the Facebooks, it's the Googles. It's the hyper-growth startups, right? And that is much more difficult. That is much more binary in terms of outcome. You either succeed or you fail, because you're going to have to raise a lot of funding. You grow, you blitz scale and grow without necessarily being profitable, unfortunately, which can sometimes not make sense. And this is kind of depending on your unfair advantages, you choose what startup you need. We've had so many people coming up to us who have all these hyper-growth startup ideas because they want to become be on the cover of magazines and stuff. But they don't have a computer science background. They don't have that status and credibility. They don't have money to invest in. They don't really know any investors. They don't have the unfair advantages it takes, or the traction. The only other way in is to get amazing traction in your startup. They don't have that yet. So it's very difficult. So we say, okay, consider some lifestyle startup ideas. Consider doing it as a side hustle alongside your main job and seeing if you can get traction and kind of bootstrap it from there. So this is really important steps. Next, we can talk about idea and how you get that from your insight. So the I part of the Miles framework gives you the idea. The E part, the education expertise, helps you come up with the product, the solution to the problem that you find with your insight. And then, so we talk a little bit about MVP. So it's just enough to get you going, pointed in the right direction, not making mistakes and having to go take 10, 20 years of mistakes to learn it. It's just pointing you in the right direction from the beginning. How to fundraise as well. We've got a chapter there. It's full of case studies and examples, and that's what the early feedback we've got on our book has been.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the practical element of the book is really insightful, because we've been doing it for years ourselves and seen hundreds of entrepreneurs go through that same process, from fundraising to pitching to fundraising to starting idea, building a team, and so on. So in the back of the last part of the book is about, but comes back to the central thing. Why do you want to do this as an entrepreneur? Because it's a big risk. And we also talk about how to deal with failure and how to get yourself in the right financial position to start a new project or a new company as well. Because many people don't talk about how to fail. And you're going to fail more often. So are you willing to fail? And this is the thing where people think that it's just, once I got the way I want to do it and I'm going to be a success, instant success, I'll get one unicorn, one business, one unicorn. It doesn't work like that. Most people have done 8, 9, 10 companies before they get to that point. I've done lots of things before I got to a point where I was like, okay. And still, even now, it's still difficult to get the right mixture right? In terms of timing and opportunity. So we talk a lot about the practical elements of it, but it's a very short guide to it. There's tons of great books out there and other blogs and new things. And we wanted to make the book evergreen, so you read it and it gives you the fundamentals, because things change. SEO changes. You know,
And
people see changes.
we
Social
didn't want
media
to get
changes.
the overwhelm is what we didn't want.
Correct.
There's too much information. They get information overload. We speak to founders who've read so much and done too much research, and it's just get started now.
Yeah.
So we just wanted it to be practical. Get started. Here's how you think of an idea. Here's what you need. You probably need a co-founder. It's so tough being a solo founder. Here's how you find a founder. You look for somebody who has unfair advantages that you're weak at. Where you're weakest on the Miles framework is who you partner up with. That's their strengths. That's the goal of what you try and do. So this is the kind of stuff we talk about, very practical things. People can apply it straight away and kind of go, okay, let me get started on this. Yeah. Or, okay, let me do this as a side hustle. Or, okay, actually, maybe I should be an early employee instead. Or maybe I should do something else instead.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it launches on the
23rd of January.
23rd of January. Get your early copies and we'll put a link down at the bottom.
And they can pre-order the book now. So you can pre-order the book now and it'll be out in all the major bookstores around UK on the 23rd, but you can pre-order it now.
Random question. Is there a bookstore you guys just would love to pick the book up from? I love Waterstones near Regent Street.
Angel Street.
Yeah.
For me, Daunt Books.
Daunt is nice.
Really?
It's a beautiful bookshop. And Foyles is also a beautiful bookshop on Tottenham Court Road. Yeah. But for me, coming closer to home, if I am in Hampstead, there's a Waterstones there. And it's just a lovely little bookshop, and I want to see it in the window. Forget picking it up from the shelf. I've always said it to my daughter. I want to see it displayed in the window. It's my local bookstore, and that'll be like amazing. But just to get to this journey and get to a point where we're publishing a book as first-time authors has been an amazing journey.
Yeah, Waterstones Piccadilly, the flagship. That would be amazing, of course. For me, next to my university is Gower Street, Waterstones. Yeah. That's a really nice one, really big one, loads of floors. But for me, the convenience factor of WH Smith Travel, you're in an airport, you're in a train station. Yeah. We're going to be there for Non-Fiction Book of the Month. They've selected us already, so it's really cool. So we're excited to be there, and that's where you can pick up
for us, the main thing is wherever you can pick it up, online or offline, as long as it reaches more people, and we get the impact of the story, but also the insights, and they can learn from it. And we've given our email addresses in the back of the book, so they can freely contact us as well.
Amazing.
And we try and answer every single email, so we're very much community driven in that sense.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We'll go through a quick fire round. Yeah,
okay,
awesome. Most valuable purchase under £100, both of you guys.
Do you want to go?
Under £100.
What did I get that I loved under 100?
Hair gel.
It might be books. Hair gel. It might be books, to be honest with you.
Everything.
Like, books can really change your life. Like for me, I read a book earlier on in my journey called The Millionaire Fast Lane. Really, I loved that book because it really changed my mindset from this idea of like, there's a lot of financial advice books, which is all about saving every penny and don't buy that latte and the compound interest works magic and these kinds of concepts where you'll get rich when you're 60 or 70. It's like, no thanks. He talks about the fast lane. You know what? The fast lane to get rich is something that's scalable. It's something, and he talks about those concepts. And I loved that book at the time when I read it in 2012, early on in my journey.
I'll be fun with this one. I think it was buying that latte for Jesper's book.
Which one?
Buying the latte for Jesper's book. I had a meeting with him. I actually paid for the latte. I remember.
Yeah. It was definitely financially the most valuable one, right?
Yeah, that's so. This is like, but if you give, then you get. So it's like there's no. I think a lot of my expenditures are about experiences. So that's why it's not the latte itself; it's the experience about that. So
nice.
Going on to books, I mean, is there a book that you would give to a fellow startup founder that you like? Obviously.
Yeah, definitely the unfair advantage.
Aside from the unfair advantage.
There you go.
I think there's a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset.
Brilliant book.
I really think that it doesn't talk about startups, but it talks about the growth mindset. And I think
like the underlying concept is brilliant, isn't it?
That's exactly what I believe. I believe the mindset is the foundation to everything else that comes in. If you look for practical things, I would say read blogs, go to Twitter and see what people are saying, because you can see what's happening in real time, fresh. And there's lots of other books, but foundationally, that's been a killer book for me. But the very first book I ever read was The Magic of Thinking Big.
Interesting.
By J.C. Squats? I don't know, I can't remember the author. But that was a book that I found in my house randomly. And that's what got me involved in self-development and personal development. And that's really what got me started. And then leading from that was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the Stephen Covey book. But more recently, I think Mindset is a great addition. It's one of the things that we talk about in our book, actually, quite interesting, is not just the growth mindset. We actually talk about a growth reality mindset, a reality growth mindset. So have a read of that because it's very different.
Growth reality mindset.
A reality growth mindset.
Mm.
So if I said to you, you can be an NBA basketball player in a couple of years' time if you practiced. Doesn't matter how much of a growth mindset you've got. It's going to be difficult, right?
Impossible. I'm 5'10".
Nothing's ever impossible, but you see what I'm saying, right? So you have to take the reality of what you're doing with the growth mindset, and that's where we've done an additional piece in this in our book about the reality growth mindset.
Yeah.
Yourself? Is it the Millionaire Fast Lane?
That's a great one. I like that one. I also would say, there's the mindset one is a really good one. I think that kind of comes into my mind because it really is important to have that foundation. I would say that. I would say that and the Millionaire Fast Lane are really good. E-Myth also really helped me early on in my journey. I do recommend the E-Myth quite a lot. E-Myth is a great book. Yeah.
And the third one would be most valuable advice you've received and actioned, of course.
For me, something I was younger that my dad told me. We grew up poor and had free school meals and stuff, so we didn't like to spend on stuff. But one thing he said is, don't worry about spending on your development, on your personal development. And specifically, he said, don't worry about books, just buy books. If you think about a book, just buy it. And honestly, like, you're gonna have to be really broke for a £10, £7, £12 book to really affect your life. So for me, it was that, and reading a lot of books when I was younger really, really helped me massively.
Yourself?
I'm quite hyper when it comes to doing businesses and startups, and the advice I've been given by my mentors and everybody is to enjoy the journey and enjoy the moment and not be too outcome focused, because sometimes the outcome is outside of your control, and you want to aim for the success, but enjoy the journey and every step of it. And that's what we're doing now with the book. We've enjoyed the journey. It's been a hard slog, but we've got there, but we've enjoyed the journey, learning and growing. And so whatever you're doing, whatever startup project you're doing, enjoy every journey. And part of enjoying the journey is to enjoy your family, your own personal time, and life in general, because there's always going to be someone who's worse off than yourself. So just that's
that gratitude, right?
The gratitude, and that's what my dad always says. There's always someone worse off than you. I'm like, oh, I'm fighting, but I can't get them, because that person can't even get on a train and go where you're going, and so it gives you that perspective. And I think that's really been something which I'm trying to take more on board as I'm doing things. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on Tech Talk London. Really appreciate it. And again, pre-order your copies. And I think it's launching on the 23rd of January.
Yeah,
so
2020.
Pre-order your copies, and feel free to contact them because their email address is on the book. So
Exactly.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Cheers, man.